So what if I told you that in early 20th century India, a, uh, a highly educated doctor would literally rather let a woman die of pneumonia than directly hand a simple glass thermometer to her husband?
Right, which is just, it's completely wild to think
It
about.
really is. Or, like, imagine a town's librarian, a man whose entire life is supposedly dedicated to books and learning, and he leads a murderous mob just because a government clerk sat in a chair.
Yeah, a chair. It's a stark realization of how these things actually worked.
Exactly. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a world where walls are entirely invisible, but, hitting them is just as violently destructive as crashing into solid concrete.
And we're really exploring the mechanics of systemic exclusion here. We aren't just looking at abstract sociology or dry
Right,
statistics.
no textbooks today.
Exactly. We are looking at how the concept of untouchability function on the ground, like in the dirt, in the everyday moments of life.
And our source material for this is just, well, it's a staggering historical document. It's called Waiting for a Visa by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar.
Yeah, it's an autobiographical collection featuring 6 very personal accounts.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to step directly into that visceral, lived reality. So if you've ever felt like you fully understood what social segregation means, today's deep dive is going to completely reframe that for you.
Absolutely. And it's so important to note why Dr. Ambedkar even wrote this. Like, he specifically chose these accounts because he recognized that people outside the system, foreigners or people in privileged positions,
People who think they get it.
right, they often know of untouchability as a textbook concept, but they fundamentally misunderstand how it dictates the most granular details of human existence.
It's not just a broad social rule.
No, it's one thing to say segregation existed. It's entirely another to understand the silent rules that dictate, who can give you a glass of water or who can drive you in a cart.
Or who is literally allowed to save your life.
Hmm.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how this system operates on an adult, we actually need to see how it programs a child.
Right, we have to go back to the beginning.
Yeah, so we are going back to the year 1901. And Bedker is just a 9-year-old boy.
A childhood epiphany, but a deeply, deeply traumatic one.
Exactly. And from the sources, they look like wealthy kids.
Oh, absolutely. They're very well dressed.
Yeah. He and his siblings are traveling to Goregaon to meet their father for summer vacation. And they are in their best clothes. New shirts, bright jeweled caps, silk-bordered dhotis.
They even have pocket money.
Right? They're just kids buying lemonade at the train station in Mysore.
Mm.
And the station master sees them and naturally assumes they're Brahmin children, which is the highest caste in the Hindu system.
Because they look the part.
Exactly. So he's incredibly helpful. He's treating them with total respect. But then, just as routine protocol, he asks who they are.
And 9-year-old Ambedkar, just without even thinking, blurts out the truth. He says they are Mahars,
Right.
which is a community designated as untouchable.
And I really want to pause here for a second because the station master's reaction, it's the first real mechanical breakdown of human empathy that we see in the sources.
It's an instant shift.
Yeah. Ambedkar describes the man's face being just overpowered by a feeling of repulsion. Like he just turns around and walks away.
Just leaves them there.
He leaves these stranded kids alone on the platform for half an hour. But, why? If he was just being this helpful guy seconds before, what literally changed in his brain?
Well, it's a great question, and it really gets to the core of how this entire system works. What changed is that social categorization completely superseded immediate human empathy.
Wow.
The station master wasn't reacting to the children in front of him anymore. He was reacting purely to the label.
Just the word muhar.
Exactly. Because in this system, purity and pollution are treated as literal physical properties. To a caste Hindu at that time, interacting with a mohar wasn't just, socially frowned upon.
Right.
It was spiritually and physically contaminating.
Which totally explains the absolute nightmare they go through trying to hire a bullock cart to finish the journey. Word spreads among the cartmen, and not a single one is willing to drive them.
Even when the kids offer double the fare.
You're right. Yeah, the money doesn't work. They have the cash, but it doesn't matter.
Because in this framework, no amount of money compensates for the perceived degradation of being, quote-unquote, polluted.
Right.
But they do eventually reach this really bizarre compromise.
Oh, this part is wild. So the children will pay double the fare, but they have to drive the cart themselves.
Right. And the cart owner just walks alongside them on foot.
So the driver gets his double fare without ever having to sit in the same cart as untouchable kids. And it's just a terrifying journey for them. They have to eat lunch by a river where the water is so thick with mud and animal excrement, they can't even drink it.
It's awful.
And at night, they seek water at a toll collector's hut, but they are flatly denied when they admit they are Mahars. The kids just stay awake all night in terror.
Right, they're convinced this cart driver is leading them into the wilderness to murder them for their jewelry.
Just a completely traumatizing experience for a 9-year-old.
Yeah, and what is crucial to understand here is Ambedkar's own reflection on this event. He writes that he already knew the rules of segregation before this.
Like in school, right?
Exactly. In school, he had to sit in a corner on a separate gunny sack that he literally had to bring from home.
Wow.
And if he was thirsty, he couldn't touch the water tap. Only the school peon could open it for him. As he famously put it, no peon, no water.
If you are listening to this and trying to imagine your own childhood, just let that sink in for a moment. Your basic biological need for hydration is entirely dependent on a specific staff member being present.
Simply so you don't contaminate the faucet.
Yeah. He knew those rules.
Mm-hmm.
But this journey was the shock that made him conceptualize untouchability, not just as a school rule, but as a pervasive, dangerous, inescapable quarantine.
It was the moment the sheer scale of the isolation truly dawned on him.
But let me push back a bit on this.
Oh.
He was a vulnerable kid then. I'm thinking as someone gets older, gets educated, acquires wealth, surely that provides some armor against this, right?
You'd think so.
Right, like if you elevate your status, you elevate your treatment.
Yeah.
Because we jump forward to 1929 now. Ambedkar is an adult. He is a barrister at law, educated at Columbia University in New York and in London.
Very highly credentialed.
Exactly. He's investigating grievances for a government committee, and he arrives in Goregaon.
And you would think status provides a shield, but the sources show us that status offers absolutely zero protection.
None at all. He needs to get from the station to the untouchable quarters. There are horse carriages, tongas everywhere. But the Tongawallas refuse to drive him.
Even though they are menial laborers driving people for pennies?
Right. They consider driving an untouchable barrister beneath their dignity. So we get another twisted compromise. The local Mahars rent the Tonga, but they have to drive themselves.
And these men are not carriage drivers. It's not their trade at all.
Yeah, so the guy driving is totally inexperienced. They get to a culvert over a river. The horse bolts, and the carriage crashes violently.
Ambedkar is thrown right onto the stone pavement.
Yeah, he fractures his leg and is disabled for days.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in previous readings, I might have thought of this like a rich guy not being able to get a taxi.
Oh, but it's not that at all.
No, it's more like untouchability is a corrupted operating system on a computer. It doesn't matter if you install the most premium, highly credentialed software in the world, which is Ambedkar's education and status.
Right.
If the foundational operating system refuses to read the code, the whole system just crashes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that analogy is spot on. The operating system of the society evaluates caste first. It's the primary code.
Everything else is secondary.
Exactly. Think about the hierarchy of values here. A menial Tonga driver felt his social dignity was functionally superior to the safety and indeed the life of a highly educated barrister.
This is just wild.
Education, wealth, professional standing, none of it acted as a shield. The caste identity superseded every single other human attribute.
Okay, so if status doesn't work, what about geography? Or specifically, religion? Because the caste system is fundamentally a Hindu structure, right?
That's the underlying framework, yes.
So my immediate thought is, if the system is rigged, just step outside the system. What happens when an untouchable interacts with people of other faiths?
It's the logical next step. You assume stepping outside the Hindu sphere offers a safe haven, but Ambedkar's experiences completely dismantle that myth of the religious loophole.
Which we see during his time in Baroda around 1917. He has just come back from 5 years studying in Europe and America.
And he writes that his time in the West had completely wiped out his consciousness of being untouchable.
Right, he felt like just a regular human being for the first time. But the moment he steps off the train in Baroda to start a government job, reality just hits him. No Hindu hotel will take him. He is totally stranded.
So he has to find alternatives.
Yeah, he finds a Parsi inn.
And Parsis follow the Zoroastrian religion, which inherently does not recognize caste or untouchability.
Exactly. So he thinks he's safe. But the caretaker tells him he can't stay because he's Hindu. So, desperate for shelter, he pays a premium and registers under a fake Parsi name.
Just trying to get a roof over his head.
And he's living in this dark, bat-infested hall filled with broken furniture. He leaves early and comes back late just to avoid being seen. But of course, he gets found out.
It doesn't last.
On the 11th day, a mob of a dozen tall, sturdy, angry Parsis armed with sticks confronts him. They line up, call him a scoundrel, and accuse him of polluting their inn.
Just incredibly hostile.
They issue an ultimatum: pack up and leave by evening or else.
And he is absolutely bewildered and terrified. He writes that he prized his shelter more than his life at that exact moment. But think about the mechanics of this. Why is a Parsi mob enforcing a Hindu caste rule?
That's exactly what I don't understand. If their religion doesn't believe in caste, why do they care if an untouchable stays in their inn?
What's fascinating here is the mechanism of social contagion. Minorities or outsiders in a dominant culture often adopt the prevailing prejudices of that culture to secure their own social standing.
Oh, wow. So they're protecting themselves.
Exactly. If the Parsis in Baroda treated an untouchable as an equal, they risked being grouped with the untouchables by the Hindu majority. So they enforced the dominant culture's hierarchy to protect their own elevated status.
Wow. So the bigotry is outsourced. It infects everything. But I have to ask, why didn't he just go stay with his friends? The sources say he had a Hindu friend and an Indian Christian friend right there in Baroda. Why rely on a fake identity at a sketchy inn?
It really highlights how inescapable the conditioning is. He did go to his Hindu friend. The friend was a noble person, very sympathetic, actually. But the friend admitted, if you come to my home, my servants will go. The social pressure would just collapse the household.
So even the allies are paralyzed by the system. What about the Christian friend?
He goes to the Christian friend, who gives him a very diplomatic runaround, basically saying he has to consult his wife.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, Ambedkar later learns the truth. While the friend had become liberal upon converting to Christianity, his wife originally came from an Orthodox Brahmin family.
I see where this is going.
Even as a Christian, she retained her foundational caste prejudices and would just never allow an untouchable in her house.
So he is literally driven out of the city. He sits in a public garden for 5 hours weeping before taking a train back to Bombay. He says even 18 years later, the memory of those armed Parsis brings tears to his eyes.
That's a profound trauma.
And we see this exact same dynamic play out with the Muslim community in 1934. Ambedkar is traveling with a group of colleagues to the Dalakabad fort. They are covered in dust from the road.
Just doing a completely ordinary human action.
Right. They see a tank of water outside the fort and they just wash their faces and legs.
And immediately they are confronted by an old Mohammedan man shouting that the deeds, which is a derogatory term for untouchables, have polluted the water.
An angry mob forms. They are screaming that the untouchables have become arrogant and need to be taught a lesson.
The threat of violence is so incredibly high.
Yeah, that when they finally get permission to enter the fort, they're assigned an armed guard, not to protect them, but specifically to ensure they don't touch any water inside.
And Ambedkar actually confronts them on this.
Right. He does. He points at the ideological contradiction. One young Muslim in the mob tells them everyone must conform to their religion, meaning untouchables shouldn't use public tanks.
And Ambedkar asks him straight out.
He says, is that what your religion teaches?
Yeah.
Would you prevent an untouchable from taking water from this tank if he became a Mohammedan?
And the crowd just goes silent.
They have absolutely no answer.
Because the prejudice isn't actually based in their religious texts. It's that corrupted operating system you mentioned earlier. The segregationist mindset doesn't stop at the edge of Hinduism. It permeates the entire societal fabric.
You think a different religion means different rules, but the underlying social code remains identical. Which brings us to a really grim realization.
Yeah.
This invisible code doesn't just dictate where you can sleep or where you can wash your face. It dictates who gets to live and who has to die.
This is where we examine the most devastating impacts of all healthcare and livelihood.
We have a story from 1929, originally published in Gandhi's journal, Young India. An untouchable schoolteacher in a village in Kathiawar has a wife who just gave birth, but she falls severely ill with pneumonia.
She is literally dying.
The teacher begs a local Hindu doctor to come, but the doctor refuses because the teacher is a Harijan.
And we should probably clarify that term for anyone unfamiliar. Harijan was a term popularized by Gandhi, meaning children of God, which he used for untouchables.
Right.
It was meant to be uplifting, though Ambedkar and many others later firmly rejected it as patronizing. But in the context of this 1929 doctor, it was the label that made him refuse treatment.
Right. So finally, someone guarantees the doctor's fee, and he agrees to come, but under insane conditions. He refuses to enter their colony. The dying woman has to be brought outside.
Outside while dying of pneumonia.
Yeah. And here's where it gets really interesting, and I mean that in the darkest, most ironically tragic way possible. The doctor needs to take her temperature, but he refuses to hand the thermometer to the husband because the husband is untouchable.
The physical object of the thermometer becomes the focal point of the segregation.
Exactly. So they set up this absurd relay race. The doctor hands the glass thermometer to a Muslim middleman. The Muslim man hands it to the husband. The husband gives it to his dying wife.
And then the process is painstakingly reversed to get it back to the doctor.
And after diagnosing pneumonia, the doctor refuses to ever return to check on her, despite being paid. And the young woman dies.
It's just devastating.
I really struggle to wrap my head around the cognitive dissonance here. You have an educated man of science, a doctor who has taken an oath to heal the sick.
Right.
How does he consciously set aside a binding professional medical duty in favor of an inhumane, fabricated social code? He literally let a woman die rather than hand a piece of glass directly to her husband.
It forces us to confront a very uncomfortable truth. We like to believe that education and scientific training automatically eradicate bigotry.
But they don't.
They really don't. The doctor felt no qualms of conscience. As the source explicitly notes, he preferred to be inhuman rather than touch an untouchable. The education didn't rewire his core values. It just made him a highly educated enforcer of the caste system.
And that exact point, that education does not equal enlightenment, is the core of our final account.
Yes, this one is so telling.
It's 1936. A young Bongi boy manages to get a government job as a talati, a village clerk, in Bursad. Now, the Bongis were a community forced into sweeping and manual scavenging.
So this job is a massive generational step up. It's a real way out of hereditary menial labor.
But the system aggressively pushes back against this upward mobility. The moment he shows up, his colleague threatens him, saying if they were outside the office, he'd give him 6 kicks for having the audacity to take the job.
The hostility is immediate.
The boy can't get housing. Nobody will rent to him. He has to sleep on the pavement of the office veranda. He buys food and eats it alone in a field.
And the water situation is just like the no peon, no water rule from Ambedkar's childhood, but weaponized in a professional government office.
Yeah, the boy isn't allowed to touch the communal water cans. He has his own small rusty pot. But the waterman, whose literal job is to pour the water, hates serving him.
So the waterman simply hides whenever the boy is thirsty. The boy goes days without water.
Eventually, he's sent to a different village to learn the work. He's standing outside the office for 15 minutes, totally ignored by the headman. Exhausted, he finally just sits down in a chair that's lying there.
We really have to look at the mechanics of this seemingly small action.
Sitting in a chair.
Yes, because sitting in a chair is a symbol of equality. It means resting at the same physical elevation as the higher castes. That is the spark that ignites the powder keg.
A furious mob surrounds him. They are threatening to hack him to pieces with swords.
Oh.
And this is the detail that just blows my mind. Who is leading this murderous mob?
Oh, this is the detail. I have to highlight this. It is such a wild detail. The mob is led by the village librarian.
A library.
Yes. The very person whose entire role is to be the custodian of knowledge, books, and enlightenment in that village. It completely shatters the illusion that prejudice is just a symptom of ignorance or illiteracy. The librarian is the one inciting the violence precisely because an untouchable clerk dared to sit in a chair.
The boy is absolutely terrified. He thinks he's going to die right there. But he uses incredible presence of mind. He asks for a piece of paper and a pen, and right in front of the mob, he writes a letter to the Mamladar, the local official.
What does he write?
He writes, "The hand of death is falling upon me today. Be so good as to inform my parents of my death."
It's framed as a suicide note, but functionally it is a brilliant tactical maneuver. By creating a written, official record of his impending murder, he introduces the threat of state and legal consequence to the mob.
He's leaving a paper trail.
Exactly. He is betting that the fear of being implicated on paper will make them hold their hands.
And it actually works. The librarian reads it and demands he tear it up. They let him go, but only after he begs for mercy and promises to give up his hard-won job.
He's forced to abandon his career and return to his parents.
The system wins.
It is a systemic crushing of ambition. Every single time someone tries to step out of the designated boundary, whether it's an educated barrister wanting a safe carriage ride or a young clerk wanting to sit in a chair, the system violently corrects itself to push them back down.
So what does this all mean? We've walked through these intense historical accounts. We've seen how the mechanics of this system operate. Why does this deep dive matter to you listening today?
Well, it matters because these accounts by Dr. Ambedkar serve as a masterclass in understanding how invisible systemic barriers actually enforce themselves. They show us that prejudice doesn't require physical walls to be absolute.
That's very true.
And perhaps most importantly, they prove that polite or educated society,
Yeah.
doctors, librarians, station masters, are not immune to perpetuating extreme exclusion. In fact, they are often its most stringent enforcers because they have the most status to lose.
It really makes you look at the world differently. Dr. Ambedkar titled this collection of memories, Waiting for a Visa. But he wasn't standing at a border checkpoint.
No.
He wasn't waiting for a physical stamp at a passport to cross into a foreign country. He was waiting for a visa to simply exist as a human being in his own homeland,
To drink water.
to ride in a cart, to seek shelter.
He was a foreigner in his own country, continually denied entry into basic human society.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over today. If a doctor's medical degree or a librarian's books didn't erase those invisible borders of the 1930s, in our modern world, what invisible borders are we still forcing people to wait for a visa to cross?
It's a question we all really need to ask ourselves.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking for those invisible walls, and we will catch you next time.